so excited to have you here. As just a reminder, well, there's the last chance to drop off your exhibitor bingo card in the basket right over there. Grab an apple, drop off your bingo card. All right, we'll see who the big winner is later. A few reminders before we begin. You turn off those cell phones. It's kind of the end of the school days. Anyway, and we can hold all questions at the end. There'll be time for that. Now I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, Camille Schulman and Arlene Skolnick. Together they present our closing keynote. Give them a round of applause! They'll present our closing keynote with an inspiring perspective on living with FASD across the lifespan. Camille was adopted from Russia alongside her twin sister and diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome at age 2. She will share her personal journey navigating school, friendships, work, and adulthood, as well as her role as a social media advocate, raising awareness about FASD. So if you're not following her, do that. Arlene will offer the caregiver perspective, reflecting on raising twin daughters with FASD, balancing advocacy and growing independence, right? And the lessons learned along the way. Together they offer a powerful message of resilience, strength, and the importance of supportive environments that help individuals with FASD thrive.
Thank you. Oops. I'm not used to this. I'd like to preface our speech by acknowledging how lucky my husband and I were to have adopted our daughters. I also recognize we were fortunate enough to be able to provide Jessica and Camille with opportunities and supports that no doubt added to their success in life. Camille was adopted from a Russian orphanage 2 hours northwest of Moscow, along with her twin sister Jessica, when they were 13 months old. They were born 9 weeks premature, and at almost 13 months old, Camille was just under 12 pounds and her sister weighed less than 10 pounds. They were still being tightly swaddled, which eliminated the opportunity to feel, touch, kick, roll, move freely, explore their environment, and even though it was just a tiny crib. All this undoubtedly contributed to their sensory deprivation. Jessica was in worse condition than Camille. She could not hold her head up, and it would take me an hour to feed her 8 ounces of formula. They were well below any expected milestones, even for preemies. It was basically like my husband Richard and I had brought home newborn babies. After a few months, I brought this up to our pediatrician in Montreal, and his response was, it was normal, just keep doing what you're doing and it will be okay. But as weeks and months went on, they were still very delayed, and I insisted that the pediatrician should refer us to neurology at the Montreal Children's Hospital. As it happened, the head of neurology was assigned to our case, and he knew the second he saw the girls that they had FASD because of their facial features. The doctor still made them go through all the necessary tests to rule out everything else. When those tests came back negative, he was confident to diagnose Jessica and Camille with FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome. My husband and I looked at the diagnosis as the jumping off point. We now knew what we were dealing with, and we went full on into informing ourselves, finding agencies to help, programs to enroll them in, and therapies to support our daughters. Supports came in many different forms, such as physiotherapy, brain gym, sensory integration therapy, osteopathy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and vision therapy.
We started doing occupational therapy, sensory integration therapy, and physio, as well as getting in contact with different organizations and programs so that we had supports in place. We went into a special preschool for disabled children called WIA, West Island Association for the intellectually handicapped, this was the 90s, that helped us learn simple life skills like how to take off and hang up a coat, put up our school backpack, and how to interact with the teachers and students. We learned some basic letters and recognizing our name. Very basic things to help prepare us for the school system. We also did an interactive group play program called Gym and Swim that helped in gaining gross motor skills. Also, we started to learn, this is how we learned how to swim. I think that's one of the reasons I love swimming so much. Now I'm very, very comfortable in the water, and swimming has massive therapy benefits. I can engage my muscles, muscle strength, and core, and help with my vestibular and proprioception in the water. One thing I remember about these programs was I was sometimes find some of the activities to be very overstimulating. I have a lot of issues with loud noise, and I remember feeling uncomfortable or very lost in my environment. There is a video of me being very scared of a massive parachute. I don't know if I didn't like the color or the noise it made, but I really didn't like it. It took me a long time to get comfortable with a lot of things. I was always a very cautious child.
Once on a road trip to Florida, we stopped at a McDonald's with a play park. There was a ball pit that Jessie went into without hesitation and had a blast. Camille stayed at the opening and would not go in. It was obvious by her facial expressions and body language that she was dying to go in. As the proactive mom that I am, I picked her up and tossed her in. She never looked back.
We had huge trees in our backyard in Montreal, and in the fall, my dad and mom would make massive leaf mounds. And because of my sensory issues, specifically with touch, I was scared to touch and run through the leaves. My mom had a very hands-on approach to my sensory needs, and she thought, well, I'm just going to dump leaves on her or throw her in the leaf pile and see what happens. I know that might sound mean, but 9 times out of 10 it worked, and I got over what was freaking me out at that moment. Now, I'm not saying to do this with every sensory experience, but sometimes we just need a little push with some sensory interaction.
That's awful. Soon after we moved to Whitby, I began to feel that Camille was not attaching to me well. She felt distant and cautious. I was worried about attachment disorder, so I decided to try something. As bedtime approached, I brought Camille up to a spare room that had a rocking chair in it. I closed the doors and lights, held her in my arms, wrapped us in a cozy blanket, gave her her pacifier, and I would sing very softly or stay perfectly silent, stroke her face and hair, consciously engage in and hold eye contact, be totally present, and just spend quiet time, alone, close time, together. I don't know if this helped, but now Camille is very close to me, shares everything with me, and enjoys spending time with me.
When we moved to Whitby, we started to do different types of therapy. We went to the Listening Center, which was a month-long program. My mom had to drive an hour into Toronto every weekday for that month. That therapy was to help with body awareness and auditory and sensory processing. I remember having to wear headphones for the therapy, and there was a long cord that would follow me around a massive room, because this was the early 2000s and we did not have wireless headphones back then. I would listen to different sounds and music and a lot of classical and even Gregorian chanting. Without even realizing it, I even heard my own mom's voice. She had to read and record different children's stories, but her voice would be distorted, so I couldn't recognize it. There was this would mimic the sounds that the fetus would hear in the womb. Speech was another therapy that I started, as I was quite delayed. I don't think I started to fully speak until I was 3. I even continued this therapy on and off until I was in 6th grade. Brain Gym was a program I was a part of in the early 2000s that helped with a lot of brain-body connection and the understanding that it is really important that a child has a good sense of where their body is in space. We did a lot of exercises that helped with crossing the midline of the body so we could have solid brain connections, and exercises in how to calm our body down when we were feeling upset or overwhelmed. I thought I could show you some of these exercises right now. Yes, can you say them and then I'll do them?
No, I don't have to stand up. You can stand. These are called cross crawls, and the idea is the importance of crossing the midline. So it's opposite hand to knee. You can do it lying down. You can actually do it for an individual by manipulating their arms and their legs. You can do it backwards as well. Turn around. Touching, it's opposite, obviously not the knee in this case. And you can continue to explain why it's important to cross the midline.
It's incredibly important to cross your midline. You have an invisible line that goes down the middle of your body. And neurologically, that's very important for your brain because you're passing through both parts of your brain when you're passing through the midline. And sometimes kids with FASD or developmental disabilities can really struggle with this concept. So it could look like they're ambidextrous, which means they only use two hands, but they never cross their body, which can look like, oh, they're ambidextrous, that's really cool. But the problem is they don't end up gaining a dominant strength hand, which means both their hands are weaker than having one strengthened hand, which is, you should be developing this skill at age 3, and you should fully understand your dominant hand at least 5.
The next exercise is called hookups, and it's absolutely amazing for calming yourself down. I've done it with my kids tons of times, and you can actually sometimes see the level of anxiety climbing, and then it drops, and it's just amazing. So you're going to take your hands and cross them over each other and clasp your fingers if you can, and then pull your arms in towards your chest,
And your feet should be crossed.
and your ankles should be crossed as well. And you just breathe slowly. I always do this when I'm at the doctor's office getting my blood pressure taken. It helps immensely. If you can't do that, cross your hands and curl them into your chest, you can put your hands in your armpits, but always also cross your ankles. Very effective, very calming. Those are just 2 tiny exercises from the region.
Occupational therapy was very important because it works on life skills, fine motor skills, and learning how to use buttons and zippers and and putting clothes on and off. Things a lot of kids with FASD can struggle with because we can have fine motor skill issues that affect us and can make things much harder to do and can make us very frustrated. Occupational therapy was very important in the beginning of my life. I think sensory integration was one of my favorite therapies. I love to ride bikes up and down the hallways and play on the trapeze. They had a massive swing that me and my sister would sit on, and they would make us lay on our stomachs and try to grab stuff off the floor, trying to engage all our sensory systems. My mom was great because she looked at a lot of the equipment that was used in therapy and would construct them in our basement so we could also do therapy at home. She went to Home Depot and bought wooden dowels and made a trapeze. She got a massive wooden panel and made a swing out of it. We also put a huge inner tube on that platform to huddle in while swinging. Mom would sometimes put up a net swing too. She made a 5-foot by 5-foot pillow and stuffed it with torn foam pieces. Jessica especially loved to be rolled up in it like a sausage. That was great for decreasing external stimulation.
I used to lie on top of her too. And it just, her craziness would just dissipate because she liked that deep pressure. Yeah.
My mom did brushing therapy with us to help with tactile stimulation, and she made sensory bins filled with small packing materials and would hide little toys that we had to find just by feeling around. I had to have surgery to release my tongue tie, and afterwards, to strengthen my tongue, we would have what we would call grape braces. We had a long kitchen table, and I had to belly crawl across and push a grape with my tongue. My sister joined me, and we had a lot of fun with our therapies. There were a lot of laughs, and it didn't have to be expensive to do stuff at home. Our kitchen table was white and perfect for smearing chocolate pudding all over, so we could practice writing letters, drawing shapes, and just having fun, all with sensory integration in mind. We also started doing osteopathy, which is an alternative medicine that emphasized on physical manipulation of the body's fascia, which holds muscles, tissues to bone. We found it really helped with our joints and ligaments and to feel loose because we also have a condition called arthrogryposis, which means we have joint contractions in different places in our body. Mine specifically affects my shoulders. I cannot raise my arms above my head, which can make putting on and taking off clothing difficult. I taught myself how to do my hair laying down on my back on my bed to be able to make a ponytail.
She just showed you that she can't raise her arms above her head, straight up. She can only.
Okay.
What?
No.
Oh, no, what?
We're Jewish, don't do that.
Oh, sorry. Oops.
Osteopathy really helped me feel better in my own body after every session. The best way I can describe it is you know when you're sick, and when you start to feel better, you realize how well you function when you're starting to get your health back. That kinda is what it feels like. I don't necessarily feel sick, but I didn't realize as the weeks progressed how slowly my body starts to lock up again until I finish treatment and realize how loose my body feels. It also helps with calming down my central nervous system. I know I need a treatment because it feels like my nervous system is sending unnecessary information to my limbs, making me antsy or feeling like I need to do more things in my everyday life to calm down. So I might go up and down my stairs of my house a bunch of times without realizing it, because I'm subconsciously trying to calm my nervous system down. Or I'll go to the park and swing for an hour just so my muscles and nerves can feel like they're weighted down. Osteopathy treatment has helped me feel less of those symptoms on a daily basis. I don't know how I would have functioned without it, to be honest.
When elementary school started, an IEP, Individual Education Plan, and IPRC, Identification, Placement, and Review Committee, were put into place. Unfortunately, it wasn't easy to get full-time support. Richard and I were strong and vocal advocates for our daughters. We didn't take no for an answer. We didn't care if the school claimed they didn't have the budget or the manpower to provide the support we needed. We knew that Jessica and Camille had the right to an education just like the able-bodied and neurotypical students. We were fearless when dealing with the school board officials. We hired a lawyer who more or less just made everyone realize we meant business. We tested the system by making the board people realize some of the forms we had to fill out were inadequate, meaning the 2 lines we were given to list our daughter's strengths and areas of weakness was simply not enough space. And when we arrived at our meeting with pages for each child, they quickly adjourned the meeting so as to go back to the special education department at the board office and decide if what we had presented them was acceptable. Guess what? It was. Even with all the advocating we did, each year presented new issues to deal with. It's a tiring process.
My first EA, educational assistant, named Mrs. E, came to be part of my school life. She was an amazing support for me, and we built such a strong bond. Knowing that she was going to be in school every day and I could go to her for anything was one of the reasons I loved school. She sat with me and my sister in circle time. She never made me feel stupid, and any redirection that she had to make with me and my sister never felt like a correction. My mom also realized we needed help after school as well, to be able to practice what we had learned in school and therapy so we wouldn't lose it so quickly. She found a respite organization to help with our learning and therapy work. She hired 2 high school students who made learning fun. They were super creative by, for example, making obstacle courses that we could move through only if we completed a specific educational task. My mom asked for them to be chaperones for us for day camps when the camp themselves couldn't support our needs. My sister and I have been affected very differently by prenatal alcohol exposure. We had opposite strengths and weaknesses in many areas. I struggle very much with the concept of reading, grammar, and math. My sister tends to struggle more with attention, small motor difficulties, and various other physical things. She could spell, but her handwriting was very messy. I could write neatly, but no one understood what I was saying because I can't spell. We had made a game plan with the EAs and teachers that when I would write something, I immediately needed to tell them so that they could write it down in an understandable way. Otherwise, no one would be able to make sense of it. Not even me. I struggled with the concept of reading. My brain just could not understand how to connect the words that I was seeing on paper to make words that you're supposed to then speak out loud or in your head. I remember in grade 3, when all the books went from picture books to small little chapter books, I couldn't read a single one that was on the shelf. I couldn't read instructions on paper, so I couldn't even do my work independently. This was the same year when my EA had to step out of the class to help other students in the school. And I remember that was always a very anxious time because I couldn't do anything without some form of help. We had been doing brain gym therapy at home. My instructor was a retired teacher. My mom must have talked about my reading difficulties at one of our brain gym sessions, and the instructor thought she could help me learn how to read. I don't know how she did it, but by the end of grade 3 school year, I had slowly begun to read. Not at my grade level, but I was actually reading. I remember I had brought a Dr. Seuss book from home on my family vacation to read to my grandparents. I was so excited to show them that I had begun to read just like my sister. Even now, my spelling is so bad that spell check can't even figure out what my words are half the time. And having my words underlined because of the grammar mistakes drives me nuts. This speech was not fun to edit. Confession, I needed a lot of help. Math also was becoming a struggle because the concepts are abstract and my brain wasn't understanding what was being taught. It was becoming apparent that I needed more help than I was getting in my mainstream class, even with my EA's help. Unfortunately, all this help started to get my peers and the friends I had made since kindergarten to realize it wasn't normal to have adults help you with your subjects or leave class in the middle of lessons. So when I had the opportunity to go into the special education program, it was a chance for me to befriend people like me and to not feel so alone in the struggles I was facing at the time. My parents were not at all excited for this transition in my school life because it was a reality check that I was struggling so much, so that I needed to be removed from the mainstream class where my sister was, where my friends were, to be put in a specific class that let everyone else know I was different. I remember my mom and dad sitting me down and explaining why I needed to be put into the spec ed program. They said that the class size was smaller and there was more EA support, and there would be less noise and distraction. I agreed and begun to go into the spec ed class part-time for the rest of grade 4, and then until the end of elementary school. Side note, I stayed in the special education system throughout my schooling until I completed college. It was one of the best decisions that needed to be made. The confidence and skills that I gained in the spec ed class is one of the reasons I feel confident enough to speak with you today. Being able to work at my pace, I didn't have to feel like I was always asking questions, also helped with my confidence. It didn't really bother me that my book said level 2 when I was in grade 4. It didn't bother me because the freedom to be able to get my work done independently was a feeling that I had slowly lost when I was in the mainstream class. To have friends that were disabled like me also helped. I didn't need to try to pretend to be something I wasn't. There was no pressure to follow trends in the classroom because everyone was at so many different points in their emotional and cognitive ability that it wasn't fair to judge someone on different things. We just enjoyed being together and having this connection with each other. Because of me being in the spec ed class, I had lost a lot of my friends' connections in the mainstream class. They didn't want to associate with me anymore, and the bullying had gotten to a point where I didn't see the reason hanging out with them if the friends in my other class treated me better. When I was 13, I started writing songs and poems that were about my life as a disabled person. I would like to read one to you now. The title is called You're Too Cool to Understand. I walk down this hall like another kid would, looking at all the kids that used to be my friends. I hear them talking and I wish I wasn't there. Ever since they realized I was different. They treat me like dirt. They are so stupid thinking I cannot hear them. Why do they have to drag me down? I'm like everyone else. I have friends like you. I can make you laugh, but you're too cool to understand. I worked so hard at showing what I can do. Like many other people, you just see one unusual thing and that's all you see. I have friends like you. I can make you laugh, but you're too cool to understand. Yeah, you have no idea, do you? My parents have always been very open with my disability. I was told about it all throughout my life. I can't remember a specific time when my parents sat me and my sister down and told us about our disability. There was no big announcement or somber conversation, as FASD had been woven into daily conversation. I would ask, why are we going to therapy? Why is Mrs. E with us? Why do you have to go to meetings in school? And my parents would just tell me honestly, because you have FASD, you might need more help in some areas where you could find things harder to do, and therapy is to help you learn other life skills. My parents even said my disability name was fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. There was no hiding it. There was no pushing it under the rug. There was no shame in the name. There was no shame in the fact that my birth mother drank alcohol while pregnant. She did, and we can't go back. I'm disabled because of her actions, but she likely didn't mean to do it, and I wholeheartedly believe that.
But my daughters are allowed to be upset. They're allowed to scream at the top of their lungs and say, this isn't fair. They're allowed to be upset with the birth mother, but they must leave room in their hearts for the probability that she did not do this on purpose. But what they're not allowed to do is use the disability as an excuse not to try. They have to try before they can say, I can't or don't like doing it. And they're definitely not allowed to use the disability as an excuse. That's the philosophy we've lived with every day and will continue to do so always.
Giving the child or adult a chance to feel their emotions, they are disabled by someone else's actions. They're the ones that live with this disability day in and day out. We don't get a break from it. We don't get to leave it at home or at school or when we go on vacation or when we go to a friend's house. A lot of times when I feel really frustrated, it doesn't last long because I was allowed to do it all through my life. So it never got bottled up until it bursted into a massive crisis. I feel what I need to feel and I move on. My mom also holds the standard of what she expects just out of reach. And in those moments, I feel like she's being too hard on me or I couldn't understand what I was going through. But I see now, as an adult, how vital that was, because I rarely ever say, oh, I can't do that, because I have FASD. If I do say it, it's because I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, because my parents never sugarcoated the things I was struggling with. Because my parents gave me the skills and confidence in talking about my disability. When kids would make fun of me, most of the time I knew that it wasn't my problem, it was theirs. When I was in grade 8, I was issued a laptop. This assistive technology was supposed to help me with writing and grammar issues that I had. I was trained in a program called Kurzweil, which means I could scan textbooks and work documents into the computer so that I could type my assignments on it. I was also trained on a program called Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is a speech-to-text program. The only issue was it took a long time for the program to get used to my voice, and by the end of the school year, that tech was so outdated that my phone was more handy than the laptop. I was worried about going to a new school for grade 9 to 12. I had been in my elementary school for 10 years. I knew my way around. I knew all my teachers and EAs. There were so many familiar faces. My sister and I went into the spec ed class in high school, and the transition was hard, especially trying to make friends. No one in the integrated classes wanted to hang out with me, and when they realized what class I was from, I slowly got comfortable with the people in my special education class and started hanging out with a boy who was a year older than me, and he became one of my closest friends, even to this day. All of a sudden, it didn't matter if I didn't have friends outside of the spec ed class. I knew I could hang out with my new friends, laugh in class, and be myself. Even though the spec ed program can feel very isolating and a lot of people tend to stigmatize the program, that class was my safe social place for 4 years. Unfortunately, we quickly learned that the way this program worked wasn't the same as in the elementary school. In the elementary school spec ed program, I was able to do work that was at my level, no matter what grade I was in. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case here. Everyone was in grade 9. Everyone who was in grade 9 needed to be doing the same curriculum level work. The problem with that was I wasn't even close to being at a grade 9 math level. So math became very hard for me, and a lot of the concepts I just didn't understand, which meant I also didn't test well. My parents knew about the flaws and didn't make a big deal if I didn't get a good score. Exams were also stressful for any kid, but especially for kids who have FASD. Sometimes we don't always prioritize the things that need to be prioritized. Sometimes we don't think ahead to the future and how our grades could affect that. I always hated the question, what do you want to do in 5 years? Because I have no idea. I sometimes don't know what I want to do in an hour from now, let alone 5 years from now. I never thought I would be still living at home with my parents, having a part-time job at a retail chain, and trying to become a successful FASD advocate and content creator. That wasn't even something I thought about as a 14-year-old. I remember one of the teachers in grade 12 who was grading my math exam, who knew I was struggling very hard in the subject, looked up from her grading and said, "Camille, I'm giving you a point because you put the decimal in the right place." Homework was always a nightmare. I'm such a bad procrastinator, and I tend to save my homework or projects till the last minute. I still need help with my parents with anything I have to write because I can't write anything without a ton of spelling and grammar mistakes. I'm very thankful that my parents were there to help me with my homework when I needed help, even if at the time I wasn't very appreciative. They really wanted me to do well in school, disabled or not, in the spec ed class or not. My parents always had a high but not unreasonable expectation of me because they didn't see my disability as an excuse not to try hard at school. They wanted me to get the best education that I could, the best grade that I could, and if the best grade in math was a C, they'd understood that because at least I tried my best. I went to school every day, I did the work that was asked of me, I I wasn't disruptive, I always showed up on tests or exam days, and I did the best I could. One of the things that a lot of people with FASD face in school is peer pressure. And my parents talked with me and my sister at length about how to say no in certain situations, what to do if we went to a party and there were drugs and alcohol. People with FASD are more likely to fall to peer pressure. Also, because we are at a much higher risk of becoming addicts to those substances. Talking to your kids about drugs and alcohol should not be seen as a chore. It should be seen as an open discussion. So if they decide that they want to do certain things or get pressured into doing said things, they can come to you and talk about it. I had a good conversation with my parents and they taught me how to advocate for myself. I have no issue telling other people no when they ask if I want to drink or want to smoke. I'm going to be the adult who will order a soft drink or a mocktail at a bar or restaurant. And if you have a problem with that, that's on you, not on me. One of the things that we talk about a lot in high school, especially in grade 11 and 12, was work. My parents at the time didn't put a lot of pressure on me to work. I didn't get a job until I was 20. The things that helped me get skills so that I could work was actually stepping into volunteer work first. I was a volunteer counselor in training at a summer camp. I volunteered at a local animal shelter and learned about wearing a uniform and coming in on time and doing tasks that people want us to do, even if they're not fun jobs. Sometimes you have to do work you don't like to do. I was part of the volunteer group for the Pan Am Games in 2015, and that taught me a lot about commitment and staying with something even if you're not enjoying it yourself, but also making sure you're being treated fairly. And just because you're a volunteer doesn't mean people should treat you as less of a person. The last volunteer experience I did was working at the local hospital as a front desk associate, where I had to show people all around the hospital. I had to be able to communicate with people and learn phone skills. We had a computer system that we could punch in and out, and we had a uniform to wear. We had to interact with other people working at the hospital, having to work well with other volunteers, and making sure we were clocking in and out at the right time so that we were not messing with other people's schedules. I was fortunate enough after high school to go into a program called School to Work to help me through the transition from high school to the job world. From there, I was in a program in college that continued allowing us to explore the work world. In my elementary school, I had an amazing teacher who worked in one of my special education classes. She was kind and supportive and always wanted the best for me and the kids she worked with. But support sometimes didn't always come appropriately. I definitely experienced struggles with teachers and other staff who didn't understand my needs or didn't care to understand my needs. An EA in grade 3 liked to yank my ponytail and invade my personal space. She also wore strong perfume that made it difficult for me to concentrate. She accused me of being lazy during a math lesson, even though I struggled greatly in that subject, and she made me run crying out of the classroom and I hid in the bathroom. She was later permanently removed from my classroom when my parents brought the issue to the administration. I had another teacher who would rearrange desks during the lunch period when none of the students were around. This was very unsettling for me and other classmates, as consistency and routine are important for being able to feel comfortable. It wasn't long until my parents realized this was not a good fit, and I was transferred back to my awesome teacher I had been with since grade 4.
In high school, the special ed students in the adaptive phys ed program were expected to collect all the recycling from all the rooms in a guise to learn life skills. I vehemently disagreed with that, as it very obviously singled out the students who were already deemed different, weird, and disabled. I suggested to the school that if the entire student population had to collect recycling to learn life skills, then I'd be okay with the program. Otherwise, it was an outdated practice and no longer considered acceptable. In the end, I made sure Jessica and Camille were exempt from that task and their time was spent in more appropriate ways. As a result of Camille and Jessica being in the special education system in high school, they were allowed to continue in a post-secondary program called Transition to Work. This was a 3-year program to be completed by the age of 21. Its focus was introduction into the work world, and the students had co-op placements for each semester for a proposed total of 6 placements. There was regular classwork as well. The first year went relatively smoothly, but the staff changes resulted in a very difficult environment for the following 2 years. For example, they insisted on having Camille tested by a school board appointed psychologist for math skills, even though the teacher knew this was an area of great struggle for Camille. They stated they wanted to prove Camille was faking and just not wanting to be cooperative in class. They also said she was lazy. Test results came back to show they were wrong. In the meeting to discuss the results with Camille, me and Richard, and several board people present, the principal was offered information about FASD by me. Her response was, "Oh, I don't like to read, so there is no point."
Another time, I was standing in the hallway getting yelled at because I didn't want to go on an optional field trip. I just didn't feel like I could trust them. The 2 adults were in my personal space provoking me. They tried to provoke behavior out of me that I had never even thought to do, but did in those moments. I never thought about punching a teacher in the face until that moment in the hallway. All I could do was slip my hands behind my back and say over and over again, I did nothing wrong, as they marched me down to the principal's office. They wanted to put their hands on me. They wanted me to punch them so that they had a right to harm me. And I had a good enough sense to see what they were trying to do. I had seen familiar stuff with my peers in the years past, and now I was the victim. I had lost a lot of trust with my teachers and EAs, and I was made to feel like I was the most difficult student they had ever worked with, even though all my parents were asking for was to make sure I was getting enough different co-op opportunities. In college, the program didn't want to have any type of parental interaction and made sure it was very unwelcoming, to the point that a teacher lectured the whole class about how at a certain point it wasn't our parents' job to take care of us anymore, and basically shamed anyone who was still living under their parents' roof. Like shame helps anyone. Disabled people are not here to live on this earth to make other people feel better about themselves. We are human beings that deserve the same respect and understanding. We have the right to achieve the same dreams and goals that everyone else has. How you make that happen is you learn about those disabilities, and you don't shy away from uncomfortable topics, and you definitely don't shut down conversation when they start to get rocky. I know I'm very fortunate that I'm able to have a job as someone who has FASD. I know that many people with FASD can struggle getting a job and keeping one. I've been working for TJX for the past 10 years. Your Marshalls. I recently transitioned to a new store location and hasn't been easy, but I'm thankful that a manager I used to work with is at my new store. Their systems are a little different, and learning the way this store works hasn't been easy, but I'm trying my best. It also is hard when you have a manager who just doesn't want to learn. One of the things I love to do is processing, which means I put security tags on items. I don't mind the manual task that a lot of my associates seem to hate. I don't mind cleaning, even if it bothers my mom that I seem to clean better at my job than at home. I give no attitude to my manager, but definitely there is back talk when it's time to do house chores. The fitting room has been a great opportunity to work face-to-face with customers, giving me a chance to branch out within the store, giving me more responsibility, making sure the fitting rooms are clean, counting the right numbers of items to keep track of what is coming in and coming out of the fitting room. The one drawback of the fitting room is when it's dead, and I find it really hard to figure out tasks to do that won't get me in trouble, like peeking at my phone for some sort of stimulation. It's definitely something I can work on. I often forget that people with FASD can struggle with new transition, and I think that's likely why I've been having a hard time. I talk with my mom and we try to figure out whether it was really a big deal or was my brain making it a bigger deal than it needed to be. I'm very lucky that I had access to so much support through various therapies, doctors, financial stability, and of course, my family. It really shows when you have that support how someone like me who has FASD can really do well in society. When support is not available, that person can feel alone and worried about what the future holds for them. People with FASD are more likely to face food and or housing insecurity, unstable finances, etc. Having a support network to help make sure they are able to be the most independent as possible, but yet still have the support systems so they don't get in trouble with debt or landlords, etc. People with FASD deserve the same support of organizations, governments, and society so that they can do well in the world. It is important to have family support, school support, and therapy. But I think what's one of the most important types of support people often forget about is being able to have support within your community. I'm so lucky that I got to grow up with my own twin sister and not have to feel truly alone when it came to my disability.
Sadly, I did not receive much family support. There was a lot of denial about having disabled grandchildren, and others who believed I exaggerated much of what we experienced. I struggled with the concept of asking for respite, and I grew to feel dismissed, betrayed, and hugely disappointed. I refused to behave that way with my daughters and continue to fully support them, accept them, and love them, and certainly never feel ashamed of them. This is the most difficult part of the speech for me because it's a sad reminder of so many lost opportunities.
Like I said earlier in my speech, being in different programs that had many different types of disabilities around me helped me feel like I wasn't the only one who was struggling, but also helped me have compassion towards other people with disabilities. One of the sports I did for a long time was horseback riding, and what made me really enjoy it was my riding instructor. She was able and willing to meet my needs first and nothing more. There was no leveling system. It was all skill-based, and there was never any pressure to advance. I spent 10 years riding and loved it so much. Recently, my sister and I joined a wheelchair basketball activity at our local fully accessible gym. It has been fantastic to participate in a sport with people who understand we all have different abilities and limitations, and the coaches are there to support us and make accommodations wherever it's needed. Being able to see different people at different levels of wheelchair basketball made me feel like I could maybe finally be able to play a team sport without feeling like the only disabled person there. A lot of people only think about FASD affecting you cognitively and forget that it can affect you physically as well. I have dealt with chronic pain, gastric issues, vision issues, and dental issues all my life. I have dealt with chronic foot pain since I was 9 years old. I underwent surgery to implant a titanium screw into my right foot to help with my collapsed arch, which affected my knee, foot, and back. It helps a lot, but I still have to wear orthotics. Do you know how hard it is to find cool shoes and then also have to think about the orthotics? How they feel in them? It sucks as someone who loves shoes. I was recently diagnosed with a condition called REM, behavior sleep disorder. This basically means that my body doesn't paralyze itself in REM sleep, so I physically act out my dreams. I leap out of bed, still very much believing I'm seeing something in my room that is trying to hurt me, and I race out to my parents' room to get away from the figure who is normally in the corner of my room. It's the action of me opening my door that wakes me up from the episode. My symptoms usually consist of very fast heart rate, sweating, and shaking. Once I realize I'm safe, those symptoms diminish very quickly. I'm on melatonin to help with my sleep disorder. I bring these different conditions up because a lot of people think you end up having all these issues with FASD all at once when you're a child, and that's not necessarily true. FASD is a disability that can affect you throughout your life, and sometimes you can have medical conditions start in adulthood that's still connected with FASD in some way. I've been wearing glasses since grade 3. Yes, I know they're very cool, thank you. I didn't know that what I was seeing wasn't normal. I didn't know words weren't supposed to shake. Copying things from the board was a nightmare, and often noticed that it felt like I was watching an earthquake that only I was experiencing, especially when I had to look at things from afar. Pouring liquids into a cup was always an issue. I could never do it without spilling. In gym class, I couldn't catch a ball or shoot a basket easily. Dodgeball was a disaster. My mom hated eye exams with me because I would give weird answers to the doctor when trying to read the eye chart. The letters would shift and shake, move right in front of me. E's would turn into A's or a T, or even maybe an S. This is called nystagmus. I also been diagnosed with BVD, or binocular vision dysfunction. This is when your eyes and brain do not work together correctly. This condition keeps you from seeing the world as a single, seamless picture. This means I did not have depth perception. My eyes did not work together, causing the left eye to turn in and shut off any information coming into my brain. At 23, I went to see a neurodevelopmental optometrist specializing in the diagnosis and treatment of neurological and developmental conditions adversely affecting the visual system. She told me that I needed vision therapy. I went to a vision therapist once a week and did exercises at home every single day to help my eyes learn how to work together. This was a very long journey, and in the 4th year, I started to notice a change in my vision. Things that I perceived as flat now appear different. Slowly, more and more, I was seeing things in 3D, such as faces, the branches in a tree, or a sailboat on the lake, or the landscape as my family drove outside the city. I never knew what I was missing. Autoimmune conditions are linked with prenatal alcohol exposure, and I'm one of the statistics. Woohoo! I was diagnosed with autoimmune atrophic gastritis a year and a half ago. It explained the scary weight loss and low energy I had been experiencing in that time frame. I dropped down to 89 pounds. I had specific type of blood work to look at my gastrin hormone levels. Normally, the level should be 100 or lower. Mine was 1,245. I think I'm winning.
You're right.
Indicating that my immune system was overactive in my stomach. My own immune system was attacking the stomach lining, and I was experiencing malabsorption. Okay, so maybe I wasn't winning. I was diagnosed with endometriosis this past year, and I've been post-op recovery for endosurgery for 7 weeks. I'm now on a medication that has fully stopped my period. As someone who has sensory issues, I didn't realize my period could be such a hellish experience for me, with heavy periods and the anxiety of not knowing if I had enough supplies, the extra executive functioning needed every month, never remembering if I had enough supplies for work, and often overstocked with pads and tampons. Now not having a period has drastically improved my physical and mental health and could be an option for other people with FASD to consider. There has been a massive movement on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok of disabled people sharing their experiences over the past 6 or 7 years, but I wasn't seeing a lot of people or influencers talking about their experience with FASD. So I decided about 5 years ago to try and talk about my experience living with FASD. It started on YouTube with my twin sister Jessica, where we did sit-down videos, vlogs, but when COVID hit, there wasn't much to vlog about. A little bit later, I stumbled on TikTok because some celebrities and YouTubers had gone there, and it really made me think that maybe I could thrive there too. So I started to make videos on TikTok, and I've slowly built a presence there. I have reached 24,000 followers and have done my best at advocating on FASD. There are some ignorant comments and people not liking that I'm raising awareness for this disability. But at this point, I don't really care if I'm making people uncomfortable by bringing FASD to the forefront of the neurodivergent movement on those sites. We have the right to be heard, and we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about our own disability. This is my mission. I want people to feel like they shouldn't hide that they have FASD. I want FASD to be talked about and people to not feel bad if they cause their child to have it. It happened. You can't change it. I won't let other people continue the narrative that it's okay to drink alcohol while pregnant, because new research shows that it's not safe. Even low to moderate amounts of alcohol can show evidence of changes to the unborn baby's brain structure, and not in a good way. I'm a proud disabled person, but I don't want children to have to live with something that could have been prevented. I share my story so other families can feel less alone, and to those who think it's okay might think twice before drinking alcohol while pregnant. My name is Camille, and this is my perfectly imperfect story about living with FASD.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes if we want to do a couple questions for them. Yeah, I'm gonna commit. I'm gonna run it. Okay.
Can you share your TikTok handle, please?
What is your TikTok handle?
Perfectly imperfect 9559.
You say it in the microphone one more time.
Oh yes, sorry, I yelled it. I forgot this was here. Perfectly imperfect 9559. Why I put numbers in there, I don't know.
You didn't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice.
Do you remember how you learned to be so in touch with your body?
I think my mom is a really good help with that because she would ask us how we were feeling, how we felt that day, or what we were feeling in that moment. And so it taught us how to be expressive in that, and probably therapies too. I think sensory integration, brain gym, all those osteopathy, all those sort of things that you have to be aware of your body to then express to your therapist how you're feeling, but probably my mom the most.
Just, by the way, Camille has business cards, I'll leave a bunch on the table, and all her handles
Yep.
are on the card. Whatever it's called.
Other questions for Camille and her mom?
Hi Camille, my name
Hello.
is Jean. And, I have a son who's 17. And your poise and acceptance and equanimity, living
Thank you.
and developing with FASD really touched me. And I'm wondering, my kiddo, he's not there yet. He hates the diagnosis. And he can be scathingly critical of other people with other disabilities. I'm just wondering what wisdom you might have to share with me or with him about self-love and self-acceptance.
I think, weirdly enough, accepting that it's okay to hate your disability. It's okay to say, today I just hate it. Today I hate that I can't understand this math lesson. I hate that my peers don't seem to understand me. I think, weirdly enough, accepting it's okay to hate from day to day is okay, and then that self-love will come after. And when it comes to learning about your own disability and accepting is watching other people who are disabled through Instagram, like social media, seeing other people, being part of disabled groups, acknowledging that we all have some form of internalized ableism that we all have to unpack. Even as someone who is disabled, I still have internalized ableism, and just learning to unlearn and accept that it's okay to have some of those feelings, but it's not necessarily okay to voice those feelings out loud. So you being that sort of comfort person, and if your son is uncomfortable in an environment, you can talk to him about it and be that safe person until he is comfortable to be in that situation.
What a brilliant response.
So I'm just wondering about your sister Jessica and where she is and if she ever speaks with you.
I would like her to, but it's just not her thing. We have a YouTube channel together, and so that's kind of where she fits in. She likes doing vlogs with me, but she's not really into the social media presence. She doesn't have the attention span.
Thank you so much. That was just so wonderful. So
I'm navigating a situation with my son who is almost 18. So I'm wondering about that time period from say like 16, 17 to age like, 22 or so, where there's this period of time where, Camille, I'm assuming maybe you wanted some more privileges, kind of that privileges and responsibilities and how those change between like, 16 and 22. And how did you know when you were ready for the next opportunity, whether it was work or responsibilities at home or additional social opportunities or whatever it might have been? How did the two of you know, from each of your perspectives, like, yeah, now's a good time to step up or try something new, even though there's an element of risk to it, and as parents, we want to make sure our kids never fail, but yet we need to kind of let them kind of step up and try these new things, even if it may or may not go exactly as planned. So I'd love any insight that you could share on that.
I think weirdly enough, not having the pressure, it kind of just snuck in. I've luckily been enough that I've been able to be responsible with money. I've never really had any issue with overspending. I don't know why that is. Maybe because I just like seeing large numbers in my bank account. That helps.
Clarify money in a debit card, because you don't really handle money.
I think, yeah, that's a good point. I think when I was 16, my parents decided that a debit card would be a good step, and that actually really helped with, weirdly enough, money management, because all of a sudden I didn't have to handle cash, and I didn't have to count out change for the cashier. But I can also see that being really hard for people because it's not concrete, it's online, it's just kind of out of thin air. But my parents we just talked. At the dinner table, we just had discussions of what a bank account was, what a mortgage is, and we just had conversations. Normal, it wasn't just, we're gonna talk about this art. We're just gonna talk about this right now. It was just woven into daily conversation. And also my mom understanding at certain times that sometimes the conversations I wasn't understanding, but that didn't mean that I didn't deserve to have that conversation. And it slowly, over time, it became easier because we would reconnect with these conversations over and over and over, and it finally would sometimes click. One of the best ways I found my mom helping me understand about large quantities of money, because we all like talking about the lottery and what we could win in the lottery and those dreams, but that money is huge. So I would say, well, how much is the lottery? My mom would say, well, with the amount of money, we could buy 3 of the houses that you're living in now. And so that gave a concrete answer. And it's like, wow, this money I could buy 3 houses that I'm living in now. Well, that's a lot of money. So sort of breaking it down like that.
With respect to being ready, a lot of it had to do with me. That expression, kids tied to the mom's apron strings, or whatever the expression is, that's my issue. It's not her issue. It wasn't the kids' issue. I had a hard time letting go. I had a hard time allowing more independence and all that stuff. But I recognized that's my problem, and I can't hold them back because I'm afraid. So, my husband and I, the kids would say, we want to try doing blah, blah, blah. Taking the bus. The first time.
The city bus or the school bus?
The very first time my kids went on a school field trip, I couldn't attend because I had an appointment. But there was a span of time between them leaving school on the school bus and my appointment. I followed the bus. had a very hard time letting go, but I did it anyways. Last summer, Jessica decided she wanted to take whatever means of transportation, bus, subway, I don't know, down to like middle of Toronto to go and visit her cousin who was at a craft show. She probably spent 5 minutes with the cousin, and the rest, like the 3 hours, was travel time. And I thought I would die. I was so scared. But I can't stop her. It's not fair. It's not right. So I don't know if that helps at all. I don't know.
She made it home.
She did make it home. Yeah. And was, exuberant that she had done that by herself. So, and now my kids are, my children are moving out. As my heart goes pitter patter. So that there's that huge step of independence that we've worked for, allowing them or them being able to live independently has always been my ultimate goal for them. Did I always think that was going to be possible? No, not really. There were plenty of times when I thought, that's never going to happen, and here we are. I really don't, I'm sorry, I don't know. We both kind of went off on 10 minutes. I have no idea if I answered you. Sorry.
Camille and Arlene, one last question. If you could leave them, these caregivers, with one last thing each, what would it be?
Wow. That's hard.
Don't be afraid to say the word disabled and disability. It is not a bad word. It is not a shameful word. Your kid's disabled, and it is what it is. If you embrace their disability, your kid will end up embracing their disability.
I don't know how to top that. I'm just going to leave it there because I think that's a good one.
One last huge round of applause for